Jody, I remember you being very active on that campaign against landmines, and it was a real breakthrough because civil society, with a few governments, Canada and other governments being prepared to give a lead, broke through the bureaucracy of the UN that every country had to see. What was driving you at that stage? And without being mushy, can you link it with the issue of compassion, which is kind of our theme?
Yeah.
Come on, Jody, get mushy.
No. I'm not going to be rude to you, Betty. Actually, we were talking last night over dinner about how many situations where people in power sit alone in a room and decide the fate of millions or billions. And they do it with no compassion. And by that I mean no sense whatsoever of the impact of their words, their negotiations, their decisions on the lives of millions. And in the landmine campaign, we were and are. I mean, the campaign persists, and I think that's the reason that the Mine Ban Treaty continues to be an outstanding success of international law. We did not allow the men in suits sitting in the lovely halls of the UN in Geneva looking at Mont Blanc over the lake. We refused to allow them to have the luxury of sitting in that gorgeous place, deciding the fate of people in countries around the world whose children and who themselves had to step out every day and worry about losing their lives or their limbs to a landmine. We brought reality to their face, and we, just like you were saying, sometimes people think human rights is aggressive. Well, if people behaved properly and with compassion, there would be no need for making them think about it. Landmine survivors themselves wanted to be part. It's like they weren't our poster children, believe me. They came to be part of this campaign because they wanted no other human beings to have to suffer what they suffered. And they came with thousands and thousands and thousands of signatures they had gathered from Cambodia. Thumbprint signatures from people who couldn't write, from countries in Africa, and they wheeled in their wheelchairs to the chair of the session negotiating nothing, and put them to him and said, on behalf of everybody in the world who wants this treaty, we hand these to you. Give them to the men in the room. And we did things like create a minefield in front of the entrance to the Palais, so they had to walk through it. And randomly, they would get blown up or not. We did things like every 20 minutes, an explosion sound would go off inside the Palais because the estimate was somewhere in the world, every 20 minutes, someone was affected by landmines. And so every 20 minutes, while they're moving a comma in the existing very bad treaty, they move the comma and think they did an excellent job of work that day. Explosions would go off that they could not ignore. We made them confront the humanity of themselves that they didn't want to confront. And I believe we need to force compassion, with all due respect, sir. We need to force people to recognize their own humanity when they choose to hide behind their suit, or they choose to hide behind their position, or they choose to hide behind the comma of the negotiating session. And I think that's when you can really affect change, is when you make them, even if they won't do it in front of you, because then in their minds you have won, which is also a very messed up male construct. It's like, no, I'm not trying to beat you. Well, in my youth. I'm not trying to win a treaty. We are trying to give the gift of humanity to this world and stop this insanity. We're trying to make you recognize you're human. You know, that's a practical application. And it was so powerful, it was just done again with cluster bombs. And if we can do it again with nuclear weapons, we will live in a world without nuclear weapons, but it will take putting it in their face.